Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I have Mayor Ben Walsh with me today as well. We'll go over some data, give some updates in the community, then take some questions. I'm going to give data over the week. We didn't meet yesterday or Saturday, so even though much of this information was reported related to the loss of human life, I just thought it was appropriate that we discuss it. We have lost 5 people in hospitals since Friday. Again, much of this was reported already. We lost 2 African-American women in their 80s, an African-American woman in her 60s, a Caucasian male in his 80s, a Caucasian male in his 60s, an individual who did not give demographic data to us in their 70s, and New York State reported on losing 3 individuals in nursing homes over the weekend. We have now lost 139 individuals in our community to COVID-19. This pandemic has been tough. We've been tested in many ways. This is the worst part of it. Obviously, I'm thinking about these families and their loved ones and grieving with them, as we have with everybody we lose in our community each day. Looking at new cases and testing, we've now tested 35,115 individuals. 33,971 tests have been returned. 3,166 returned since Friday. We have 2,129 positive cases. That's 25 new cases since yesterday. And we've had 35,008 negative results. We sent 1,066 tests since yesterday. We have 270 pending tests going into today, and 5.7% of our results are now positive. Again, remember back when this all started in March. It's now June 1st. The infection rate was between 8 and 8.5% when we were doing symptomatic testing and when we were doing targeted proactive testing. We have now gone universal. Anybody can get a test. And now the infection rate, as we said it probably would, has dropped. That is good. 5.7. It hasn't been that low yet. Over the last 3 days, our New York State Department of Health system, called the Eclair system, Onondaga County return tests were 1,720 on average per day. Take our 3 days of positive cases against the average. Our infection rate over the last 3 days is at 2%. That's the lowest we've been. Good news. We'll continue to have universal testing at the Syracuse Community Health Center. Today we have mobile testing at Clay Central Park on Wetzel Road in Liverpool. We had over 350 people scheduled for appointments. So we expect to have very, very large testing numbers tomorrow from our county. That's just one of our sites that will do over 350 people. Tomorrow, the mobile testing site will be at the West Genesee High School in the town of Camillus. And then on Thursday, we will be at Immaculate Conception Church in Fayetteville. And then on Friday, we will be at the PSLA, formerly Fowler High School. Mayor Walsh has got a brand new big athletic project going on there, long overdue. So we can't wait to see that finished. But certainly on Friday, another opportunity for folks in that neighborhood to get testing as anyone else. Looking at our regional data, tough getting numbers over the weekend. Yesterday was a tough day in the community, a better day than the day before, but tough day as far as testing goes, 688. Our average right now for the region, again, remember, 775 a day on average. Our 7 days moving average from May 25th through May 31st was 1,444, so almost double what our mandate is. Hospitalizations down 1, 75 individuals in the hospital, of which 40 of those are waiting discharge. Again, we have given the state 2 facilities that we think we can move these COVID-19 folks that are no longer sick enough to be in a hospital but cannot test negative for COVID yet. We have 2 plans to move these folks, waiting on the approval, and then those 40 folks will come out of our numbers as far as hospitalizations go. So really, we're looking at 35 folks in the hospital related to COVID right now, so good numbers. 14 individuals are in critical condition. Let's think about these folks and pray for them, please. They are going to be in a fight. They're in a fight right now. We need them to get better. Related to who's in the hospital, 44 Caucasian, 14 African American, 7 of another race. 10 individuals have declined to share their demographic data with us. To date, 251 individuals have been released from hospitals. Overall, 2,129 positive cases since March 16th, up 25, pretty good number. 8 household contacts out of the 25, 10 related to senior living facilities, so that number continues to decrease from where we were. And that leaves 7 community spread, very good number, as we are in phase 2 now. So let's hope that those numbers stay solid as we head towards phase 3. Again, phase 2, a lot more people starting to come back to the workplace today and tomorrow. So more opportunities for the infection to spread. We need to be smart. Please physical distance, wear a mask. We have 909 active cases, 1,086 recoveries. Out of our new cases, 48% of them have been asymptomatic. And so that just shows you a lot of them coming from senior facilities, employees who've had some exposure, some residents that have had some exposure, but essentially no symptoms. So we continue to watch that and try to learn from that. 1,265 of our cases have been female, 864 male, 101 are under 19, 350 in their 20s, 277 in their 30s, 263 in their 40s, 340 in their 50s, 271 in their 60s, 208 in their 70s, 196 in their 80s, and 123 in their 90s. Breakdown by municipality. The city of Syracuse, 1,195 cases, 562 recoveries. Clay, 168 cases, 110 recoveries. Onondaga, 135 cases, 38 recoveries. Gaddis, 110 cases, 31 recoveries. Salina, 92 cases, 58 recoveries. DeWitt, 78 cases, 55 recoveries. Manlius, 76 cases, 56 recoveries. Camilla, 64 cases, 39 recoveries. Lysander, 37 cases and 29 recoveries. Pompey, 26 cases, 22 recoveries. Van Buren, 30 cases, 9 recoveries. Skinny Atlas, 15 cases and 15 recoveries. Lafayette, 8 cases, 3 recoveries. So they picked up a new case down in Lafayette when we did testing down there. One new one from our southern towns. We were looking for that. Marcellus, 7 cases, 6 recoveries. Elbridge, 5 cases, 2 recoveries. Atisco, 5 cases and 5 recoveries. Tully, 4 cases, 2 recoveries. Tully picked up 2 new ones from when we did testing there. We'll figure out if those were asymptomatic or not. Be interested in that. Spafford, 3 cases, 2 recoveries. And Fabius, 2 cases and 2 recoveries. At this time, we a lot going on in the community. Certainly busy weekend. Mayor and his team did an excellent job dealing with the outrage from what happened to Mr. Floyd in Minneapolis. And at this time, I'm going to have the mayor come up and give an update. Mayor?
Thanks, County Executive. I want to start just by thanking the community. We had a tense couple of days over the weekend, Saturday leading into Sunday. But as we reflect on it over the past 24 hours or so, a few things I think stand out to me. Number one, we had hundreds of people protesting over the course of 2 days in the city of Syracuse, and the vast majority of that time it was done peacefully, and the vast majority of people that were involved protested peacefully. That's what this country's all about, and I'm proud that as a city that was able to happen in a largely safe and respectful manner. The police department accommodated those protests, made sure as the protesters worked their way through the streets that they could do so safely. And again, I think everyone involved really stepped up to make sure that it was safe for the most part. We had community leaders in the protests trying to make sure that people continue to be safe, and I want to thank them. Again, I want to thank the protesters themselves, and I want to thank the police department. We did, of course, have a tense time, in particular Saturday night into early Sunday morning, where a small group of individuals turned the protests more violent. We did see some property damage, both to government buildings and private property. At that point, the police department had to change the way in which they were engaging with the protesters to maintain order, and that went on again into the early hours of Sunday. But Sunday morning, by the time I was back downtown, we had community members side by side with city employees and business owners cleaning up our city, and that was a beautiful sight. So again, as we all analyze how all of this transpired, I think there's a lot we can learn, certainly. There's a lot we can be proud of. But again, I look at it and I'm really proud of the city, proud of the way that we handled it, but certainly sorry to see that we did have some unfortunate events that transpired. I think it's important to be mindful of the reasons why the protests are happening to begin with. And I should note that there's a protest going on right now. So we don't think that we're done, because the issues that are being protested are far from being addressed. From systemic racism to police-community relations, these are all areas that we need to work on as a city and as a nation, and we're devoted to doing just that. I know the county executive is committed to it as well. The two of us spent a good amount of time with local clergy members yesterday, talking and listening. I had a chance to engage directly with the protesters along with Deputy Mayor Owens and Chief Buckner. That's how we heal. We talk, we listen, we develop relationships, and that's going to be an ongoing process. This healing process has to be ongoing. So I think we made it through a very tense and difficult time this weekend. We hope that continues. But I want to thank the community for helping us to get there. I want to thank the county executive for his partnership. The sheriffs were, the county sheriff's department was very supportive and involved, as were all the local law enforcement agencies, as well as state agencies. The New York State Troopers were present. Governor Cuomo made sure that we had the resources we needed from the state. So just a team effort all the way around, and I very much appreciate it. I'm going to turn it over to the county executive if he wants to add anything, and then, of course, be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.
Yeah, just to echo the mayor, some serious things need to be addressed, and have needed to be addressed for a long time. So our community, I think, was working on these. I think there's been an intentional alignment to address issues of inclusion in our community. And when we talked about the mayor's platform when he ran on, and when I was running for this office, I talked about our PIE platform, poverty being the P in the pie. And so I think we need to continue to do what we can to address this and heal and listen and learn from what folks are saying. And so we're committed to doing that. And I think overall our community handled itself well. Again, you had a select group of people who took advantage of an opportunity to drive an agenda that was their agenda, not the protesters. So unfortunately, that drove a lot of things. The mayor and I sent out a release, both suspending the curfew in Onondaga County and the city of Syracuse. And certainly that was a tool that helped have a successful day yesterday. So saying that, we'll take some questions related to what's going on in the community, COVID, anything else.
Ryan, for a few hours on Saturday, it almost seemed like coronavirus didn't exist anymore. We know that's not true. We know it's still a huge problem. How do you wrap your head around the two coexisting events, both theoretically, but then also physically? Do you think that many people together, many without masks, will become a problem?
Could. It's not. It goes against everything you're supposed to do with COVID-19, right? So, but the reality is the events that have transpired in Minneapolis appropriately is pissed people off, and so that's what happened. So at that point, when you're looking at the reality on the ground, you're not going to go around enforcing physical distancing when people are hurting the way that they were. So we'll see if there's new COVID cases in the next 6, 7, 8 days related to some of these folks that participated. Certainly the health department will look for it. But we'll see what happens with that. I don't think COVID-19 is going to slow down any protests right now related to this topic.
So you've suspended the curfew, and we seem to have had a successful night last night. But what did you learn today that makes you confident that that's the right decision?
Yeah, so when we, and I'll let the mayor answer this as far as it goes, what's unique about this issue is that there wasn't just protests in the city. There was other protests countywide, but the protests themselves went across borders, towns, city, village, and the protests themselves wasn't what drove the decision on our part. It was the fact that there are individuals that would take advantage of the protest to implement a destructive agenda. And so knowing that you had that likelihood, we needed to have our policies matching each other. Because if you had a curfew in the city and then you didn't in the rest of the county, essentially the protest could move peacefully, but then you would have the same potential folks going there. And again, when you talk to your law enforcement partners too, there's intelligence that there are some potential areas being looked at countywide, for some of these same folks that were looking to implement their agenda, which wasn't anyone else's. So we had a good night. I talked to the sheriff. I talked to other law enforcement partners countywide. I talked to the mayor, who's talking to his team. So that's how I came into my decision that it wasn't necessary. This was used as a tool based off of concerns from Saturday and intelligence on things that were supposed to act on Sunday. Mayor?
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to that. Imposing a curfew is that's significant. That's something that we don't take lightly. I can't count how many times just over the past 2.5 years that I've served in this job where there's been a series of violent incidents in the city, and I've had a lot of constituents say, put a curfew in. I do not take lightly taking someone's liberty away. When we talked about it, we looked at the situation on the ground. We had just gone through a very difficult night where there was a lot of property damage and the possibility for people to do harm to others and to each other. We didn't know how the community was going to react to that. I signed that order at 12:35 a.m. when we were still very much dealing with active looting and disruption. By the time we got to Sunday morning and the sun came up and people came out and started to clean up, that for me set the tone that said, I think we're going to be okay, but we didn't know. And so we wanted to let Sunday play out. It did. It's a tool that, as the county executive said, it's a tool that we can use, that we can add to our toolkit to keep people safe. That was the only goal. It was not to, again, take people's liberties away. It was not to arrest people for just walking down the street. It was to make sure that the general public that was not engaged in the protesting knew that it was not necessarily safe to be out in public, and it was a tool to for the protesters to know that we were not comfortable with people being out all hours of the night, again, because we wanted to make sure that we could maintain everyone's safety. So, we never had any intention of arresting people just because they were out after 8. It was a tool that was intended to ensure a specific outcome, that being everyone ending up safe, and that's the outcome that we came to, so I think it was the right decision.
So were there any more arrests made? Has there been any more crackdowns on the people who did, or at least are suspected to have committed some of the crime from Saturday?
So I don't have an update since the chief's last public update of 7 arrests. A couple of those were burglaries associated directly with individuals that were looting. There was also a number of disorderly conduct charges, but as I mentioned yesterday, A lot of business owners may have not been at their businesses, may have not known that damage had taken place, or were just concerned or scared and didn't know what to do immediately. So we've been reaching out proactively to businesses. Our Department of Neighborhood and Business Development, the Downtown Committee has reached out to all the businesses in the Central Business District to do an inventory of damaged property. At last count, I think we were at 18 properties damaged, and we've encouraged all of those property owners to file reports so we can actively investigate those. So I'll look to see if we have an updated number, but that was the number that, I think as of yesterday.
We've heard in other cities that these that the few groups that went in a violent direction either came from outside the area or had some sort of organized movement that was rooted elsewhere. The last time I spoke to the chief, that there was no evidence of that here. But the 7 people arrested so far, and maybe more people arrested in connection, what was their motive? What obviously they took advantage of peaceful protests and the outrage, but do we have any indication as to why they chose personally in Syracuse to do this, if it was outside connections or what else could have motivated it?
Yeah, I can't speak to their motivations. Looking at the addresses, it does appear that they were local, city or county residents. So we were certainly on alert for outside influencers, and I do think that there was outside influence in terms of rumors and trying to incite fear and confusion locally here. But we really haven't seen that transpire on the ground. But that's certainly something that we're aware of and keeping a close eye on.
From what we saw, overnight Saturday into Sunday, but then Sunday everyone was in standby for it to go as badly. But this city really got its act together, and Sunday was a almost textbook example of how to transition quickly. What do you credit that change to?
Really, all parties involved, but I want to start with the community. Again, I mentioned there were specific community leaders that I know that attended the protests, that tried to reinforce a positive message, to reinforce the importance of staying safe, and I think that helped a lot. And when you combine that with the police department and the way in which they handled the protesters, and again, not just sat back, but actually accommodated and facilitated the protest by closing off streets to allow people to freely move around, as they're doing as we speak right now, that sends a message of mutual respect that I think carried forward. So I think credit goes around to everyone involved, and now we just need to focus on how we can continue that pattern.
Mayor, do you know if there were any official complaints lodged against any officers from Saturday night?
I'm not aware of any official
from
complaints
citizens?
lodged against the city or the officers. We'll look into it, though. I'm going to turn it back over to the COVID-19 expert here.
Well, it will be very difficult contact tracing. So we'll look, we'll see if they volunteer in their tracing, and certainly if there is any sort of trend. We had a trend at the facility in Madison County where you had all those workers from the same business. If we find a trend and it's confirmed that 5, 6, 7, 8 people participated in protests and now they have COVID, we'll share that information.
The protests took place right outside the Justice Center. Do you know anything about the status? Were they on lockdown? Is there anything unusual over the weekend with the running of the Justice Center?
Yeah, I think, look, at Saturday was a pretty tense time. There logistically, law enforcement would have challenges in any arrests made, getting them into the Justice Center, and certainly and so there was different arrangements made in the event that was an issue, where Jamesville was an option to have temporary bookings. So Look at, I think to the mayor's point again, I think everybody did really well. To Andrew's question, people was the answer to why things changed. People, it was people working on behalf of the city as public servants and people who live here and care about the city. So, that's what the turnaround was, and it was a remarkable turnaround. Saturday was not organized like other communities where you had these organized and maybe some of those outside influences happened. It was more of an organic situation, and so certainly part of the worry could be Sunday was going to be organized, and our residents wouldn't allow that to happen first, so that was great.
The hospitalizations of COVID-19, can you speak yet to the solutions specifically about getting those, almost recovered people out of the hospital?
Yeah, two facilities, one in Oswego County. We're not going to go specifically what they are yet, and one hospital having a dedicated space outside of its regular hospital beds. We floated those in front of the state. We believe they will be approved, and then our numbers, these folks who are literally, this is you put yourself in this perspective. You're sick. You go to the hospital. You're ready to be discharged. You no longer want to be there, and you're stuck there. Right? That's literally what's happening. So these folks don't need to be there anymore. They got to test negative. Some of these folks have eventually tested negative. This problem's been going on for a while. So, but this will be there. But the good news is this problem will solve itself if we continue to see the decrease in cases in nursing homes. Eventually, folks they're recovering if they're getting sick enough going to the hospital, and that process has been going on for a while. So hopefully this problem is going to solve itself too, because the uptick in cases in nursing homes and senior-related facilities has been more driven by employees than residents.
Those facilities, that is a two-prong approach that you're pitching, or is it one or the other?
No, both.
Both. And
Both.
so you'd move Onondaga County citizens to Oswego County.
It's a regional solution. This is a regional solution. So for central New York counties and potentially other counties as well, to meet the executive order.
And is that a nursing home in Oswego County or a hospital?
We're not going to get into that yet.
Okay. And last question, for the hospital, they would not count in the hospitalization number even though they're in a different wing? Okay.
Correct. That's the proposal.
Do you have an update on churches?
No update on churches. We got on a regional control call. We talked about it again. We talk about it every day. I think it'd be helpful more than ever now to have some of our clergy able to operate and communicate with their congregations. And so I spoke about that on Sunday morning to some senior level officials in the governor's office, and we talked about it today. I think we're going to see some movement on this. It makes too much sense to sit around and look at what's happening in the state, in the country, to know that we can do this in a safe way from our health department officials and just not do it.
So do you have a goal this week of trying to accelerate maybe another industry or another sector of business coming online before phase 3? And if so, what is that, and what are you trying to work towards?
So I think the ones we've talked about, Terry, that are churches. We've talked about outdoor seating at restaurants, which is gaining some traction, and certainly, was there one more that we're really putting? Dustin
Fitness
USA
centers.
and Great Northern Mall. We have look at these malls. There's close to 40 small businesses in Great Northern Mall. They got nowhere to go. And Dustin, same thing. I know we got our big box retail and our high names there, but we have small local companies. And the argument about physical distancing in the mall, yeah, you can go to a Walmart. It's not a sound argument. So I get the state's worried about if you do it statewide, you have Connecticut, New Jersey crossing over, creating really almost tourism attractions if you go first in certain parts of the state. But I don't see that playing out right now, and that's why this should be kind of a regional approach. So we talked about it. Everybody, they're looking at it. I know they're looking at it. They've told me they're looking at it. They've told everybody it. So hopefully those three things can kind of be, call them whatever you want, phase 2.5 or whatever, but hopefully they happen before phase 3.
Did you have your call today, and were those some of the topics on your call today?
Yes, they were.
Mayor, since you're here, what's the status of swimming pools? Any decision?
Yeah, so we've been looking at our pools really closely. There's a number of considerations. The longer we go without federal aid, the more that decision on pools becomes a financial one as opposed to a health one. Our pools are expensive, and again, we have no indication as to when the federal government might act. So right now, I would suggest that you ask the Senate and Congress what the status of the city of Syracuse's pools are. If we are financially in a position to do that, I think at this point we know we're not going to be able to open up all of them. I've asked the Parks Department to give me a few different scenarios where we might be able to open 3, for example, in different parts of the city. We would obviously have to control how people come in and out of them. The state has indicated that at least preliminarily, that the social gathering rule would still apply there, so any more than 10 wouldn't be allowed. Our pools are big, so that's logistically there's some challenges there. But we know in the past we've also had some challenges with security and too many people in the pool area. So like everything else, I've challenged the Parks Department to say, I'll worry about the financial piece, and I'll keep bugging the Senate and the Congress and remind them that every day goes by, more essential employees are being hurt by their inaction. You be creative and reimagine the way in which we would maintain our pool facilities. Appointments, wristbands, online scheduling. Those are all things that we're considering. And so I think it's safe to say probably within the next week, no more than 2, we'll have a plan. But again, the answer lies in Washington, D.C.
The expense with pools mainly staffing?
Staffing, lifeguards, and with lifeguards, not only is it we have to find them, and we always start in the city of Syracuse for city residents. We have to certify them, and usually we do that in pools that are currently closed, so that's a challenge as well. So logistically, it's a significant challenge, but I'll tell you, I still try to spend a lot of time in the community engaging with constituents, and I ran into some kids the other day over on the west side. I was handing out some masks, and I said, anything I can do to help, and they said, open the pools. And that's the thing that I think about most, is that for many children in our city, our pools are the highlight of their summer, and they have no other relief for cooling down, and that breaks my heart to think that we're not going to be able to deliver that to them. So I'm going to do everything in my power to get some pools open for our young people to enjoy and to get some relief. But there's a lot of factors working against that right now.
Mayor, I asked the county executive last week about phase 2 and the office option and any improvement in the in-person working situation for the county. How about at City Hall or the area around City Hall? Have you increased workforce in person?
We haven't increased our on-site workforce since phase 2 launched. We are working on our own plan. I have to remind the staff we probably shouldn't call it phases, because then it's phases upon phases. So maybe we're talking about stages of bringing people back into the workforce. But my goal from the beginning has been, if people that are currently working remotely feel that they're doing that in a productive way and they want to continue to do that, my goal is to accommodate that. And for those that can't wait to get back into work and feel that's where they can deliver the best service to our constituents, I want to try to accommodate that in a safe way too. So again, it will be an incremental approach. I would say probably within the next week you might see a few more bodies start to make their way into some of our facilities, but all of our buildings are still closed to the public. And again, our focus is on service delivery, and much as the county executive has said, it's not just because we're able to bring people back in doesn't mean that's the priority right now.
Mayor, last time you were here, you said you had a family meeting about talking about getting tested.
You're good. You're good, Trish.
Have you gotten tested since then?
So that was on my list to hit the county executive with before I put him on the spot now. We had another family discussion this weekend, and I think it's likely that I am going to get tested soon, especially because I spent a lot of time this weekend with a lot of people. I kept my mask on, but it's an increasing concern in the Walsh household, so I think I may have to take one for the team, but I really don't want to put this guy on the spot, so I think I just did. But again, I have three ladies at home, three very strong women at home that tell me what to do, and I listen to them before I listen to this guy.
County Executive McMahon. People get upset at me when I call you Ryan.
Yes, Andrew.
How did the haircut go?
Excellent. Excellent haircut. Terry Weaver was actually first to want to see how that experience went. I've never been so happy to give a large tip to a barber. And so it was nice. It was just a way to try to get back to a little bit of normal. That changed quickly later in the day, but that was a good way to start the day.
Do you have any indication about businesses that have had a chance to reopen now that Friday was a little iffy, but now we're into Monday? They had the weekend maybe to certify.
Yeah, remember certain communities or certain clusters are off the sidelines now. So your real estate. So think about realtors showing houses, and that drive. That's not a lot of activity. Those are a lot of people. Those sales. It's a lot of income that gets generated, that gets spent. And so retail was certainly, pretty busy. Certainly we got to get the rest of our retail infrastructure going. Car dealers can now operate pretty freely. So these are all things that are helpful. Certainly this week, I think a lot of companies in our buildings downtown are figuring out just the question that you asked the mayor and that we talked about last week is how do you, just because you can come back doesn't mean you come back the way you were before. And so I think you'll see as the week plays out more density in the buildings downtown, which will give a nice stimulus to these restaurants. Even though they're doing takeout, still help out more people to be down here, need to eat.
Do you talk about the fair on these regional calls at all, and do you have any idea which way that's going?
Yeah, I'm concerned about the fair. The Erie County Fair canceled. So I think that's one of those things where you talk about a week in the COVID-19 fight is a lot of time, and that you don't want to make big decisions like that too early in case things get better. And then you've already made the call, and then things are okay and you could have had it. But I think that decision's probably getting close. So we've made some progress with this virus, and the data shows it. Hopefully we can continue to make distinguished progress where it makes it harder to cancel the fair. I think that's really up to us with what we do from a physical distancing standpoint, as well as communities across New York State. But it's good news in New York City. Phase 1, they're going to enter soon. They know what they're doing. They're making progress. The state's data, statewide, very good. Like we've said, the virus is here. It's not going away. At some point, the data becomes a little bit irrelevant once it's at a certain level. The goal is to flatten the curve, save the infrastructure in the hospitals, and that's what we've done. Now, in restarts, the goal is to make sure we don't have spikes that jeopardize the infrastructure. Phase 1, no spikes, so now we're into Phase 2. Anything else? Just wanted to, there's a young lady whose teacher reached out to me telling me how well she's been doing with distance learning, so I wanted to give her a shout out. Eldon Elementary School first grader Sienna Catalino. Sienna, you have been doing a great job. Your teacher told me so, and your teacher's always right, so congratulations to that. And again, thank you to the community. Thank you to the mayor and his team. They did a great job this week on